Nicko Mcbrain calls it quits from touring with Iron Maiden. Savatage announces reunion shows for 2025. Avantasia releases a new single, and I give you my review on Live at Budokan by Helloween. All of that coming up next here on the Metal Command Podcast.
You are listening to the Metal Command Podcast.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Metal Command Podcast here, December 7th, 2024, also known in the United States as Pearl Harbor Day, as this is the anniversary of when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. And I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. And again, I always appreciate your support. So if you like what you see and hear in this podcast, by all means, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video. And of course, if you are on any other form of social media, give me a like or follow there. Have a lot to get to today. Really excited to talk about the new Avantasia single and to give you my review for Helloween's Live at Budokan live album. I'm going to talk a bit about Savatage getting back together and playing some shows. But first, let's talk about the big news of the day, and that would be Nicko Mcbrain from Iron Maiden announcing his departure, at least for now, from touring with the band. And I have a lot to say. I was not expecting this announcement to come pretty much in the middle of a tour, but he's playing some shows in South America, and then he's calling it quits, at least from touring. It didn't really say anything about calling it quits from the band, according to the press release, but he could be out of the band. However, he is definitely not going to be touring. Nicko has been in Iron Maiden for 42 years, and he is now 72 years of age. I know he had some health issues, which may have contributed to this. However, I got to be honest, it's a very sad thing to see. So I'm going to talk a bit about Nicko's career a little bit and my personal experiences with the guy, having met him and interviewed him on this program, in the past on my radio show. So let's talk about his departure. Every time I see something like this, either an artist will maybe pass away or an artist leaves a band and basically, for the most part, retires. And that sounds like what Nicko is basically doing, at least retiring from touring. It reminds me, and it should remind all of you, that our time is limited here, folks, and we may not have these bands around as long as we may think we do. I mean, these bands seem like they're going to live forever, and granted, their music will, but the guys in these bands aren't getting any younger. And when I talk about bands not getting any younger, I'm talking about Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and Metallica and some of these big heavy metal bands that have really helped shape a musical genre. And then I think of all the bands that aren't around anymore, like Motorhead, for example. Calling it quits. Ozzy Osbourne, he's retired. These are big, iconic artists that really shaped the scene that we all enjoy today. I mean, these are the pioneers. These are the bands that, really were looked to by so many other bands that helped shape the heavy metal genre. And, it's a sad thing to see this go. Now, personally, I've had Nicko on my show in the past when I had the radio show. Couldn't find a nicer guy. The dude was really cool. And the first time I ever interviewed him was when I started my show in 1998. Virtual 11 came out. Not the most loved album by Iron Maiden fans, but that album had come out, and Nicko came on my show, and he was an absolute blast to talk to. I mean, the guy was really, really cool to talk to. And I met him a few times. I met him the year that Bruce came back. So Nicko came on my show again. I think it was 1999. I got to meet him here in Cleveland. A really nice guy. And over the years on the radio show, he would come on and interview on the show. And I loved talking to him because, I've interviewed every single person in Iron Maiden, even Yannick Gers. You don't really see interviews with him, but I did interview him once. But he is the most fun out of anybody in that band. All the guys are really nice, super cool dudes. I've met them all at one point. But the most fun person out of anybody in Iron Maiden was always Nicko. He just had this upbeat, funny personality. And to be honest with you, it's unfortunate that he's leaving. Now, I'm going to read the press release for all of you here really quick. So here's the press release that I'm going to read for you. After much consideration, it is with both sorrow and joy I announce my decision to take a step back from the grind of the extensive touring lifestyle. Today, Saturday, December 7th, Sao Paulo will be my final gig with Iron Maiden. I wish the band much success moving forward. I will, however, remain firmly part of the Iron Maiden family, working on a variety of projects my longtime managers Rod Smallwood and Andy Taylor have in mind for me. I'll also be working on a variety of different personal projects and focusing on my existing businesses and ventures, including the British drum company Nicko Mcbrain's Drum 1, Titanium Tart, and of course, Rock and Roll Ribs. What can I say? Touring with Maiden the last 42 years has been an incredible journey. To my devoted fan base, you made it all worthwhile, and I love you. To my devoted wife, Rebecca, you made it infinitely easier, and I love you. To my kids, Justin and Nicholas, thank you for understanding the absences, and I love you. To my friends that are always there for me, I love you. To my bandmates, you made it a dream come true, and I love you. I look into the future with much excitement and great hope. I'll be seeing you soon. May God bless you all, and of course, up the irons. Really classy statement. And I've always thought Nicko was a very classy guy anytime I've ever met him. And the guy is a phenomenal drummer too. I mean, people forget. Let's take a look at this guy's career for a minute here, right? When I look at his career, he started out in Iron Maiden in 1983. And the guy played on all the recordings, all the live recordings since then. And the dude is just a phenomenal player. He was a phenomenal performer live. Aside from the fact that he did have some health issues, he still really didn't lack in the performance category throughout his entire career. I've probably seen Iron Maiden at least over 50 times in my life. And the man never had a bad performance, in my opinion. The other thing you got to keep in mind, too, before Iron Maiden, because he did have a career before that. 2 albums he played on that were really well liked by a lot of drummers at that time. Making Magic and Putting It Straight by Pat Travers. Those 2 records are very good. And back in those days, back in the late 70s, a lot of drummers really looked to those albums. And those 2 records had a lot of influence on a lot of people playing drums back then at that time. And a lot of drummers that may have listened to Nicko and Maiden. Many of them were into the Pat Travers band and loved those 2 records. And those 2 records have had an influence. I've had a few drummers come on the show over the years that have told me that. So this guy's done some cool stuff. He did the Iron Maiden first 10 years box set. He did the Listen with Nicko series. For those of you that may not know what that is, Iron Maiden, in I believe it was 1988 or 89, they released what was called the first 10 years box set. It was a box set full of 12-inch albums. Each album had the 2 singles and, of course, the B-sides from each single on those 12-inch records. And each record, or if you got the CD versions like I did, each one had the last track basically had Nicko Mcbrain, talking about that particular era of the band and that particular single. He would give you the chart, where it was in the UK charts, like where that single ended up, and he'd give you some stories from that time in the band. Even the stuff that predated him, he did comment on those singles as well. So I got to be honest, that was a really fun thing. I remember when I was a kid buying those as imports and listening to how goofy this guy was. And then what was funny is when I first had ever interviewed him on my show in 1998, the funny thing was I kept thinking about, is this guy going to be like the dude that is on the first 10 years box set? Is he going to be that much of a fun guy? And boy, was he a fun guy. And I'll never forget this. So when I first interviewed him, the funniest thing he ever said to me, and it was the very first question I ever asked him, I asked him, I think it was something along the lines of, and I don't remember, I have to look for the interview, but I don't remember exactly what the question was, how it was worded, but I said something along the lines, how do you like this Virtual 11 album compared to X Factor. It might have been something like that. And how do you like this album, and how is it done for you? And then he says to me in reply, well, how do you like it? Right? And then he starts laughing. He goes, I'm going to do the interview. How about we do that? And he just starts cracking up. And he just sounded exactly like the dude that was on the Listen with Nicko tracks on that first 10 years box set. So Nicko's always been a great guy to talk to over the years. And, you know, I can't say enough nice things about the guy. So it's a sad thing. You know, a member of Iron Maiden is finally kind of semi-retiring. I mean, obviously, according to that press release, he's going to be doing some other projects. Maybe he'll be doing stuff for Iron Maiden. Maybe he will play on the next studio album and maybe just not do the tour. Maybe he's going to help out with other things, maybe in helping to manage the band. You know, it's really kind of... it's kind of ambiguous what kind of projects, you know, in regards to the Iron Maiden family he's going to work on. But nevertheless, Nicko stepping off the stage. It is a very sad day. He's a very cool dude, and he's definitely going to be missed. And I'm just curious, folks, what is your Nicko Mcbrain story? Did you ever meet him? You know, what is your experience with this guy? If you've ever met him or hung out with him, I'm curious if you have anything you want to put in the comments about Nicko, because, again, stand-up guy, super cool dude. It's definitely sad seeing him go, and it's just a reminder. You know, we're all mortals, folks. I mean, eventually Iron Maiden isn't going to be around anymore. Eventually, these guys are going to all call it quits at some point, maybe in the next 10, 15 years. Enjoy them, folks. Enjoy these bands and these musicians while they are still out there playing shows, playing live, and recording music, because once they're gone, they're gone. And it's something that us as music fans and metal fans should still take the time to appreciate, especially while all of these guys are here. With that said, let's transition into Savatage. All right. Go over here to Savatage, announcing reunion shows for 2025. So the lineup in Savatage that will be playing these shows, and there's been some, you know, for the most part, it's been positive. There's been a few mixed reactions to it. But the lineup is as follows. You have Al Pitrelli, of course, and Chris Caffrey playing guitar, Johnny Lee Middleton playing bass, Jeff Plates playing drums, and then, of course, you have Zach Stevens singing. Basically, it's the Wake of Magellan and Dead Winter Dead lineup minus John. So I have some thoughts on that. A lot of the comments that I was looking at when these announcements were made, and they're playing some festivals. I think it's like, right now it's like 5 or 6 festivals at this point. So it's not like they're going on this big, huge full tour. I mean, they're playing 6 shows. But my thoughts are this, you know, because I'm looking at these people that are saying, oh, the band died when Chris Oliva died, or there's going to be no original members playing and it's just a tribute band. You know, the usual garbage that people like to spew out when something like this gets announced. Here are my thoughts. Regardless of whatever your view on this band is, whether you like this lineup and you are excited about this, whether you are upset that there are no original members playing in this lineup, at least as of now, or if you thought the band died when Chris Oliva died, the music created by this band deserves to be brought to a live audience. Let me repeat that. Regardless of whatever your opinion is of this band playing these shows, in my opinion, the music created by Savatage deserves to be brought to a live audience. And aside from maybe bringing, you know, Steve Doc Wackholtz back in to play the drums on these gigs, the lineup that is going to be playing these songs basically are members of Savatage. They know what these songs are supposed to sound like. And unless you're going to get Doc involved playing drums, right now, these are the guys probably best suited to play these shows. And I would love to see Doc Wackholtz back in the fold playing these songs live. But since he's not going to be part of that lineup, at least as of now, because who knows what can happen at these festivals. You never know if they just decide to bring somebody back. He hasn't been announced or anything as basically playing these shows. He has said in interviews that he would at least come as a guest and play some of these gigs, or at least play some of these songs. This is the lineup, and I have no problem with this lineup. I'm a late comer to Savatage. I'm going to admit this now. I did not follow the band when Chris Oliva was still around. I was a late comer to Savatage. The first Savatage album that I ever really heard was Dead Winter Dead. So I didn't really get into Savatage until the mid-90s to the late 90s. The other thing is, this lineup, this was the first band I ever met, folks. It was this lineup plus John Oliva. In fact, I ended up getting to bring, it was funny, I ended up getting to bring Chris Caffrey and John Oliva to a radio interview at a friend's radio show. It was Dr. Metal from the Metal Meltdown show in 88.7 that was here on WJCU at the time. I ended up getting to pick John and Chris up at a hotel, took them down to the radio station, and they did an interview down there, a live interview actually, but a lot of fun. I saw that show on the Wake of Magellan tour, so it would have been 1998. And I saw it at the old Peabody's in Cleveland. So if you were from Cleveland, you might remember the old Peabody's, not the one that was like near the college by Cleveland State. I'm talking about the old Peabody's in the Flats. That's where they played. And it was a great show. And I got to hang out with those guys. It was the first band I ever truly met. And really great group of guys. It's still a great experience that I think of in my head. And for those of you that come and say, hey, look, the band died when Chris Oliva died, I totally understand where you're coming from in that. For me, my favorite era of Savatage would be Hall of the Mountain King, Gutter Ballet, Streets, and Edge of Thorns. I think those 4 records are some of the best music I've ever heard. I like some of the early stuff. I thought Dead Winter Dead and Wake of Magellan were pretty good albums, but those 4 records I named to you, with Hall of the Mountain King, Gutter Ballet, Streets, and Edge of Thorns, for me, that's the band in their prime, at least for myself. So I get where you're coming from. Chris Oliva had a very unique style of playing, and I can understand where that crowd comes from. But as far as I'm concerned, and the way that I'm going to talk about it is this. Obviously, you're not bringing Chris back. John Oliva has a lot of medical issues. He can't join. In fact, let me read a press release from him, a quote from him, talking about this. It reads as follows. As far as I go, I was going to do these shows, but unfortunately, I run into more health issues. I want you to all know that if there was any way I could do these shows, I would, but my health issues are more serious than I originally thought. As most of you know, I fractured my spine in 3 places and have recently been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis as well as Meniere's disease. My doctors are working with me to get healthy again. I am working closely with the guys and will be involved in every other aspect of the show. I am 100% behind the guys doing this, and I promise I will return as soon as possible. In the meantime, I am working in the studio on new material. It's actually a really cool thing to hear. New material being worked on. I love you all, and thank you for understanding my situation. I know my brothers will deliver the goods. Enjoy Sava Legions. Much love to you all. John Oliva. Okay. John gives it his blessing. He's involved with the show, and he's actually writing material for I'm going to guess, another Savatage album. I know it's been talked about, but John's a cool dude. It's sad he can't be a part of these shows because this lineup they have going out, plus John playing, piano, keyboards, and singing a few songs, it was a great show. It really was. I only saw it once, but man, it was a phenomenal show. I actually saw the band live twice. When they toured with Poets and Madman and had the Damon Janaya guy singing there, I saw that show as well. But the lineup with Zach Stevens that's going out I think it's a very good lineup. I think they will do a phenomenal job, at performing these songs. It would be cool if Doc Wackholtz goes and maybe one of these festivals goes to one of them and gets to play a few songs. That guy is an outstanding drummer, and he's an original member from the band. So I think it would be cool. But I have no problem with it. I know some people think it shouldn't happen, but as I always say, if you don't like it, don't go. So with that said, I'm going to go into break. Coming up next, I'm going to talk about the new Avantasia single called Creepshow. And, of course, coming up next, my review of Helloween's new live album, Live at Budokan. I'll be right back. Hey everybody, Tony here from the Metal Command Podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching, and if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, and if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support. Come back to the Metal Command Podcast. Tony here with you. And now it's time to get to my review of Live at Budokan by Helloween. New live album that's coming out December 13th on Reigning Phoenix Music. Helloween is, of course, releasing this album, which was recorded at Budokan Arena in Japan. And, for me, in my opinion, this was a great idea. Budokan Arena is an iconic place, and I thought it was very fitting they would record a live album at this arena. Really, really cool place. The band has actually always had a great Japanese following as well. And before I get into my review, I'm going to let Andy Darris tell you why they decided to record it at Budokan Arena. Here is the interview clip from the recent interview I did with Andy Darris of Helloween. Check it out here. You have a live album coming out, live at Budokan. I finally have been able to listen to the entire thing, and I think the mix and the sound of the live record is amazing. And the band has always had, obviously, a very good following in Japan for as long as I can remember. So what was it about Budokan? What was it about that show that you decided to say, hey, let's record a live record here, and let's record this show and release it at some point?
Well, simply because we're talking about the holy concert hall of Japan, which until the 70s, bands were not even allowed to play in there because it's that holy sumo hall. We all know we love sumo. And I remember myself watching lots of fights and battles in live broadcast and on German television. It's like being knighted, put it that way. If you are out to play Budokan, especially on weekend, we're kind of knighthood of Japan now. So it's a great honor. Musicians know it. I mean, we had a saying in our scene. When I looked up, like it was 16 or 17, I remember there were lots of great musicians in my hometown. They'd been like around 30, 35, and everybody was looking up to them because they had some little success going on in the area. And they always said like, oh, imagine once playing Budokan and then die. So that stuck in my head. Before the show, I thought, okay, you're playing Budokan now, please don't die. But nevertheless, it was like fantastic. Staying on stages like this is like definitely a dream come true, and probably one of the top spots of your memories when you look back as a musician.
Sure.
You can't get any further in Japan, put it that way.
Andy Darris talking about the Live at Budokan live album by Helloween and why they decided to record that album there. So, my thoughts on this live album. When I evaluate a live record, I usually look at what the band has done in the past, and of course, I can kind of compare it to other live records, but I usually like to compare it to what the band has done previously. So my opinion on Helloween live albums has always been kind of mixed. The first album, live in the UK, Keepers Live, I Want Out, that was cool. I wish it was longer. And for whatever reason, on the American version, they didn't put the song Rise and Fall. Never figured that one out. That's not bad. It's from the Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2 tour. Obviously, you get to hear that whole band, with Ingo playing as well. The next live album was High Live, and that came out during the Time of the Oath tour, after that whole tour ended. And High Live was okay. I would probably say it is the least favorite of mine of any live album that Helloween has ever put out. You have Legacy World Tour, the live album from the Keeper of the Seven Keys, the Legacy Tour. That is where the quality standpoint pretty much stepped up a lot as far as the production and as far as the mix goes. That is a very good live album, actually. And then we didn't really have any live releases until United Alive. So United Alive came out. That is when Michael Kiske and Kai Hansen came back. That is probably one of my top 2 or 3 live albums of all time. Not just probably my favorite that Helloween has ever done, but it is probably one of my top 2 or 3 live albums of all time. Probably right up there with Live After Death by Iron Maiden, or the other Iron Maiden classic live album that always gets overlooked, Beast Over Hammersmith. But United Alive is a fantastic live record. It just pretty much a flawless live album to begin with. So now we have Live at Budokan. And how would I compare this? So I would probably say Live at Budokan is, first of all, the mix and the production sound great. I think the sound of this live record is every bit as good as United Alive and Legacy World Tour. I would probably put all of those 3 live records in the same category as far as the quality of the production is concerned. Very, very good sound, very good mix. Very well done, very well played. I mean, these guys are extremely talented people. And again, just great performances overall on all 3 of these live albums. And I would probably say Live at Budokan, I like it just as much as United Alive. The only thing I would say that I like better about United Alive is the song selection. Because United Alive is 3 CDs basically. And you have songs spanning almost pretty much every era of the band and almost every album. Not all of them, but you have such a much better song selection because you have more of the back catalog in there. With Live at Budokan, they didn't do as long of a show, and of course you're playing songs off of. You're basically playing songs off of the new album, the self-titled album that they had just come out with. So, me personally, I would say the album is phenomenal. I think it's great. If you like Helloween and you like their live releases, it's a must buy. The video, from what I've seen, I haven't actually watched a Blu-ray. I don't have that or anything at this point. But looking at the video online that they've shot for this, I personally think it looks better than the video for United Alive. So I think the Blu-ray and the video and the fact that they are in that arena, I think it just looks better. So 10 out of 10 for me. Obviously, it's my favorite band of all time, but the live record, the quality factor of it, the sound, everything is phenomenal. If you like Helloween, it's a must buy. Now, one of the things I did bring up in a previous episode is that I think it would be cool if Helloween would record a live album after each tour. And I said that because, look, this is one of the most unique shows in heavy metal. For me, personally, this is one of the greatest things to happen in the metal scene in the last 10 years. It would be really cool if they were to put a live album out after each tour. So in other words, you put a studio album out, you go on a huge tour, you put a live album out, go in, record the next record. And I brought that up to Andy Darris, actually, and this was his response. Check it out. with as unique as of a show that you guys have, you know, one of the things that I've talked about on the podcast, and one of the things I thought would be cool is, you know, between your studio albums, maybe after each tour, you know, during each tour, actually recording a live album and releasing it between albums after each tour. Have you thought about doing that?
Yeah, but this might get a bit boring, don't you think? I mean, I don't know. I love live albums when it's like a kind of a milestone, and you say, okay, this we gotta actually tell the world that we're proud of this one. And for Budokan, that's definitely a thing, not only for us, but for the musicianship out there who follow us. They are probably very proud of us, probably as much as we are for ourselves. Yeah, it should be a milestone, put it that way. So what we last time we released but it's a YouTube release that was live in Wacken, for example. It's like one of the biggest metal festivals in Europe. Milestones are important, but I don't think we should release each and every year an album, a live album. That'll be friggin' boring, I think.
Okay, so that's Andy Darris after I had asked him, hey, will you guys record a live record after each tour? You know, I get it. You know, when he says it has to be a milestone, it makes a lot of sense to me. You know, Budokan is definitely a milestone, which is why they did that. United Alive was a milestone in bringing Kai and Kiski back. I get that. When you look at Legacy World Tour was basically kind of a milestone because they were paying tribute to the Keeper records. Again, I understand that. So I understand where he's coming from. Me personally, as a fan, I would still love to see them come out with a live album. Now, it is a 40th anniversary tour that's coming up, so maybe they might do something pretty unique in regards to that. But I understand where he is coming from. It has to be the right time, right situation, and it has to be some sort of milestone event to where they want to record that. He did bring up the Wacken live album, or that was pretty much not a live album, but it was pretty much put out on YouTube, the live show. I would love to see that released someday. So at least, you know, to be able to go in and get it on CD, vinyl, all that other fun stuff. So that's my review. I think the live record is phenomenal. I think it is mixed really well. It sounds good. The recordings are great. Overall, again, 10 out of 10, pretty happy with it. Last but not least, let's talk about this really good single released by Avantasia. So Avantasia has a new album coming out in 2025 called Here Be Dragons, and the first single has finally come out. It's called Creepshow. Has a pretty cool video. You can find that on YouTube or, you know, anywhere else that they've put it out. My thoughts on the song are this. I would say it's a very typical single and a very typical sounding song from Tobias Sammet. And what I mean by typical is that it has great hooks. The song isn't overly way too long. It's just over 3 minutes. I think it's like 3 minutes and 18 seconds or 3 minutes and 19 seconds. And it has a very catchy chorus. And if you look in the past with Avantasia, especially the more recent albums, the first single is usually a song like this for the most part. And you know, I remember like one of the coolest songs they ever did was Lost in Space. Very catchy, not overly long, not drawn out, just a very short, straight to the point song with a lot of great hooks and just great melodies all the way through. So I think this song, Creepshow, is great. And I'm really looking forward to the album. Like I said, when he was talking in the press release about having the same sort of attitude he had in the early days, it kept making me think, man, I went back and listened to the old Ed Guy stuff. I went back and listened to the first couple Avantasia albums, and man, I mean, those records are still stand the test of time. Vainglory Opera still sounds good today. You know, the Ed Guy album, Vainglory Opera. I mean, that record is still one of my favorite power metal albums of all time. That first Avantasia album is still one of my favorite power metal albums of all time, the metal opera that he put out. Just great stuff. So Creepshow, in my opinion, is a step in the right direction. It's not atypical from what Avantasia has done in the past or what Tobias Sammet has done in the past. It's still very good stuff. And personally, for me, I like this song a lot. And to be honest, I like this song a lot more than a lot of the recent stuff that Avantasia has done. And they've done some really good stuff. So I ended up listening. When I was looking at the plays, how many views it had on YouTube, I was probably 50 views. I must have listened to the song probably 50 times. That's how much I like it. A lot of high hopes for Avantasia. I cannot wait until that album comes out. Already pre-ordered it. I'm really excited. And that's all I have for you for today, folks, on December 7th, 2024. If you like what you see and hear on this podcast, by all means, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video. And if you're following me on any other form of social media, by all means, folks, give me a follow there. With that said, thanks for watching. Stay metal.